Do you ever feel like people hear you, but nothing ever lands, right? You could be going through a course, teaching things, and then students are like, oh, hang on, let me just go back to that lesson. I can't recall. Or you could be coaching, let's say, and you've had a session and people don't remember particular sessions. What I want to share in this video today are just some strategies. They can be pretty powerful if you use them right, but they're good strategies just to help you make sure that the message that you're trying to share sticks, and that you want to make sure that your audience doesn't just remember your words, but they do have a shift. In this video, we're going to actually explore just some quick little pointers. It is a short video, and it's just about basically how words alone can fall short when you're trying to teach. So what we want to try and do is share information that embraces that embodied cognition. I can never say it right, but anyway. And it's all about how embodied cognition can actually impact learning and communication in general. And you can use these techniques and these strategies to help people really connect and just really remember, and more than anything, take action on what it is that you're trying to share with them. So whether you're a coach, a course creator, or just someone that's trying to help other people grow, right? This information will just help you communicate in a way that it can feel effortless, but it has a lot of impact. Hey, I'm Nikki Kelly. I'm the founder of Wisdom, and I am obsessed in helping people like you just turn your knowledge into something that's really powerful and teachable, and more than anything, transformational. It's so important. And if you're here, it's very likely because you care about not just sounding smart, but you also want your message to matter, and you want your audience, whether it's one person or whether it's 100 people, you want them to actually feel something that stays with them long after your conversation with them ends. So that's what we're going to dive into today. So let's talk about the most common misconception, right? Most of us are taught to focus on what we say. And yes, you've got to think of some particular words that you might use. It might not be vocal where you're actually talking with people. It could be through copy in your, content, articles and so forth. And that's where you do need to concentrate on your words, right? But when you are trying to interact with people and get people to really understand what you're trying to teach through recorded videos, whatever it is, we need to concentrate more on other areas. And research does show that what people remember rarely are the exact words that you say. They normally remember the moment, the feeling that they have, and the energy. And I am one of those people. There are a lot of memories that I have where I go, I do remember that moment. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember what they said in the sense of how it made me feel. It didn't feel right, or it felt fantastic, right? And this is all a part of that embodied cognition. So this is because, communication on its own isn't just verbal, right? It's embodied. It's everything. We actually feel everything through that communication, even online. So we spend hours writing posts. We spend hours building lessons or delivering content. But if our tone or our energy, or even just the delivery in itself doesn't match, we tend to create friction, and there's that disconnect, or it can confuse or lose your audience, right? So we really want to make sure that we can provide the information so it sticks with our learners and audience. So let's go through those strategies. So what is embodied cognition? It's the idea that we don't just process information in our brains, we actually process it through our entire system. It's our body, it's our emotions, our memory, and the environment. And this isn't just theory, it's backed by neuroscience. And one perfect example is the most famous and probably most watched TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. And it shows where she's actually standing there in a power pose. And it's like a superwoman stance, right? And she stands there just for 2 minutes. And by doing that, it can actually shift your confidence in the way you feel. And this is a perfect representation of this, right? It's not just because we've told ourselves that we have to feel that way, but it's because we've actually experienced it physically. And that's the power of embodied learning. And you can use it even when teaching online. So let's talk about the strategies for teaching that actually sticks. First point is speak in images, not just information. So instead of defining a concept, paint it, right? And it could be something like, instead of saying set boundaries or consider, your energy levels when you just stretch yourself too thin, paint a picture of how they could potentially be stretching themselves too thin. And that could be like, think of your energy like a garden hose with holes all in it. and it's leaking and there's just no pressure. But you fix all those leaks, you stop people from interfering with you, and you set those boundaries, you can get a strong, steady flow. And usually people will sit there and go, oh yeah, okay, I get that. No worries, because you can visualize it. So that's an image. That's when you're actually making it sticky. The second thing that you can do is create tiny physical anchors, right? And this is where you invite your audience to actually do something quite simple whilst they're actually learning from you. So it could be asking those people after, you've shared some information and so forth, just to jot down a word. So they're connecting the physical of writing and listening to the information. You could ask them to close their eyes and visualize a win, getting them in that moment. You could ask them to get up and stretch when they're learning something new. All of these are actual micro movements, and these help actually encode the message, believe it or not. So learning does become a physical experience, and it's not just a mental one in these moments. So try these little micro movements. The third strategy is using tone and energy as the tools to share information. So when you say less, you mean more, right? And I've talked about this in a previous video. When you slow down to emphasize a key point, or it could be, smiling when you're telling a talk or something, it just adds that extra emotional context to your words. And when people see that emotion and hear that emotion in your words, they tend to sort of connect a little bit better rather than that monotone where you just sort of switch off. So the fourth one is just acknowledging the learning moment. And they're those pauses, right? It's just that pause in a conversation, but pausing gets people to actually sit there and go, okay, yeah, understand. Moment to absorb the information, basically. The other one could be, what does that feel like in your world? So get those people who, when you're sharing some information like I am here right now, well, how could you apply this right now? So setting those little micro movements in a talk, getting people involved in what you're telling them. And also you could be asking people, let's try this now. What I've shared with you, give it a try before we move on to the next thing. So it's making those moments where we stop, really absorb the information. And it's not just stopping and just sitting there. It's actually getting them to be active. And that's that physical component. So this really does help your audience just move on from passive listening to actually active learning. And that's where that physical movement, the physical thinking going through, stop, has it landed? How does it feel in your world? And also, let's think about how you can try this out before moving on to the next step. So let's recap this short video. We often think that great communication is all about words, but we know it's actually about the experience that we create for our learners and our listeners. And it's because learning is embodied. Our brains do remember more when we feel and when we imagine and when we interact with that information. And how do we do this? Well, we use metaphors, we use tiny actions, emotional tone, and the learner check-ins, just to turn your message into something that really is memorable for them. You don't need to be louder, you just need to be more felt. So think about what it is that the experience that you're creating for those listeners and those learners. So if this sparks something, hit like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments anything that you've had stick with you in the past. Why did it stick with you? If you want to go deeper as well, we've also created a free space on our own platform, Wisdom, which is where you can really access more resources and templates and even behind the scene walkthroughs just on our system alone. But we really are the hub to help you teach and share that information and that knowledge, wisdom that you have with ease. We're all about keeping it simple and making it easy, not just for yourself, but for your members. And if you are someone that is building their own community or you're sharing courses and so forth, running a coaching program, I invite you, give Wisdom a try. We do have a free plan, so you can check that out. So like I said, if this sparks something in you, hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.